Dis altyd so 'n kosbare voorreg as ons as gelowiges ons Here saam kan worship, om saam kan aanbid, om saam kan eer, saam sy naam kan groot maak. Van my kant af, grace and peace. Ek is so dankbaar dat jy die diens saam met ons deel. Verlede week het ons klaar gemaak met ons reeks oor die name van God, of kom ek stel dit oor hierdie deel van ons reeks oor name van God. Ons gaan bietjie later van die jaar gaan ons weer na 'n paar ander name van God kyk, en ek hoop regtig dat dit vir jou iets beteken het, dat dit vir jou iets oopgemaak het van wie God is en hoe hy homself aan ons openbaar, en dat dit vir jou bepaalde betekenis gehad het. En as jy enige van hulle gemis het, dit is op ons YouTube kanaal, en ek wil regtig vir jou aanbeveel om daarna te kyk en om daarna te luister, sodat jy kan hoor wat die Here vir ons geleer het en hoe hy homself aan ons geopenbaar het. Nou, vanmôre se boodskap is so 'n bietjie iets anders weer. Baie keer so tussen reekse, of gewoonlik tussen reekse, dan doen ons 'n video teaching. Dit is my manier ook om julle almal bloot te stel aan ander predikers en om goed met julle te deel wat vir my ook persoonlik baie beteken het. Nou, voordat ons met hierdie reeks begin het oor die name van God, het ek vir julle 2 teaching video's gewys van Pastor John Burke van Amerika. Die pastor wat vir 30 jaar, 25 tot 30 jaar navorsing gedoen het oor near-death experiences, en dit was sulke amazing boodskappe wat ons gekyk het. Een van hulle was Imagine the God of Heaven, waar ons geleer het wat hierdie mense ervaar het, nie net van die hemel nie, maar hoe hulle God ervaar het. Die ander een was the City of God, en hoe baie van hulle presies beskryf het, soos wat die woord ook die nuwe Jerusalem beskryf. Ek wil net sommer so weer net gou gesê van boeke van John Burke, wat ek dink significant boeke is wat mens kan lees. Die een boek se naam is Imagine Heaven. Dit het hy 'n klomp jare terug geskryf, wat gegrond is op hierdie navorsing van hom. Onlangs het sy nuwe boek verskyn, Imagine the God of Heaven. En dan is daar the Imagine Heaven Devotional, en dan is daar so 'n klein boekie met die naam van What's Afterlife. Dis alles boeke van John Burke, en ek sou regtig sterk aanbeveel dat jy van hierdie boeke lees. Ek glo dat dit vir jou geweldig baie kan beteken. My ervaring is dat hierdie boodskappe lig ons oë op, dit gee ons hoop, dit gee ons moed, en dit laat ons sommer 'n bietjie anders kyk na die lewe waarin ons is, en dit laat ons vorentoe kyk ook, So ek glo ook dat vanmôre se boodskap vir jou bepaald iets gaan beteken. So ons gaan 'n bietjie aan met dit wat hy geopenbaar het, en vanmôre se boodskap se naam is Relationships Last Forever. En ons gaan hoor van wat hierdie mense se ervarings was ook, van mense met wie hulle verhoudings hier op aarde gehad het, en ons gaan ook die waarde van verhoudings besef, en hoe belangrik dit is dat ons alles moet insit in ons verhoudings hier op aarde, en dat daardie verhoudings ook vir ewig gaan voortgaan. So voordat ons na hierdie boodskap gaan luister, kom ons sit so, en kom ons vra vir die Here om dit te seën en in ons harte te beweeg en te werk. Here Jesus, as ons praat oor hierdie boodskappe wat ons reeds gekyk het van John Burke, dan onthou ek die wonder van dit, hoe die mense U beleef het, hoe hulle U beleef het as die God van lig en liefde, en wat dit vir ons beteken het toe ons dit gehoor het en toe ons dit geleer het. En ek onthou ons geleer het van hoe hulle U stad gesien en ervaar het, die nuwe Jerusalem, en dit so ooreengestem het met wat die woord sê. En Here, dit het ons oë opgelig, en dit het ons gehelp om op te kyk en vorentoe te kyk en te weet, ons is op pad om eendag vir ewig by U te wees. En ons weet dat U het vir ons plek gaan gereed maak, en dat die dag nader kom wat U vir ons gaan kom haal. En daarom is dit vandag vir ons 'n awesome voorreg om weer na 'n boodskap van John Burke te luister. Spesifiek waar dit gaan oor verhoudings, wil ek vra dat U dit vanmôre regtig in ons harte sal beweeg en sal kom werk deur dit, dat dit vir ons regtig sal ons oë weer eens oplig, maar ek wil ook bid, Here, dat dit vanmôre weer vir ons die bewaarde en die belangrikheid van ons verhoudings sal besef. So ons maak onsself oop, en ek wil vra dat U nou in ons sal beweeg, dat U in ons almal sal werk, en ek wil vra dat ons geen issues ergens met tegnologie sal hê nie, dat die tegnologie niemand sal verhinder om hierdie boodskap te hoor en te ontvang nie. Praat nou met ons en leer ons in Jesus naam. Amen. So kom ons kyk na hierdie boodskap van Pastor John Burke, Relationships Last Forever.
Well, today we are talking about relationships. And if you're just joining us, I want to encourage you to go out to gatewaychurch.com, watch some of the past messages, because we've been looking at 30 years of research I've done, over 1,000 cases of people who clinically die, are resuscitated, but they come back to talk about the life to come. And we've been comparing it to what the scriptures have taught us all along. And one of the biggest questions people have is, what about relationships? We have all kinds of relational questions about the life to come. I think about Ben, one of my son's friends who used to come over and spend the night with us. And Ben had a heart condition, and so he couldn't be too active, but he loved to be active. And inevitably, I would hear pounding on the ceiling, and I have to go up to Justin's room, and Ben and Justin would be jumping off the bed, slam dunking the Nerf, basketball, and I'd have to say, guys, calm down, because it could literally kill Ben. It could stop his heart. And then at age 18, it did. Ben's heart stopped, and he actually had a near-death experience. And it was the week before Christmas, and he put it out on YouTube with these little cards, and then Christmas Day, Ben died. And this video went viral. The Kardashians were tweeting about it. It was in People magazine. I did the funeral for Ben right here on the stage. News outlets broadcasted around the world. People came to faith from Ireland to Tasmania. But at the same time, you go, why? Why would a kid have to be so held back his whole life, and then relationship life be torn from him at 18? Why would a loving family be ripped apart so quickly? And then we're faced with the brutal murder of Ahmaud Arbery and the tragedy and the injustice of that. And you think about his mom this Mother's Day, or you think about the many mothers who are grieving, thinking that could be my son. And this causes us to struggle with God, right? Why, God? How can any of this make sense? Unless, like the scripture says, this life is not the end, it's the beginning. And like we talked about last week, there is justice coming in heaven. And like I want to talk about this week, and relationships continue on, and how we can start to bring more of heaven to earth today, because that was Jesus' prayer for us. What if the life to come starts to make sense of all that we experience in this life? And what if, like so many say, it's so much better, even a child doesn't want to come back? Megan Hagins is in my wife's life group. She had a near-death experience at 6 years old. Watch what she has to say.
I had my near-death experience when I was 6 years old. I was in first grade, and I was asleep. I had sleep apnea my whole life, and I hadn't realized. I had 2 angels come and get me and take me to heaven, and they were showing me around heaven. There was a section where the angels told me Jesus wanted me to see something. They said we had some time and we could do anything I wanted to, and I wanted to play the game Candyland. So they materialized it and they said, teach us. And as I was teaching them, they were just so full of joy and mirth at the experience of playing this game with me and my explanation of the rules, and they would throw their heads back laughing and say, how could anyone not want to play this game? It's great. And the feeling that was conveyed to me was the great joy of spending time with me and being present with me and making me feel valued for what I brought to them. That is really something that's so important to be present and to not be elsewhere, to be present with the people that you love and spend time with them. It's the best gift you can give people, especially kids, because they get a lot of, I think, their self-worth from understanding that. And then after that, they said I had to go back. And I didn't know what they meant, you have to go back. I said, I don't want to go back. And they did this kind of thing where they waved their hand, and I could see my school from above. And they said, if you don't go back, your teachers and your friends are going to miss you. They're going to be worried. And I said, no, I'm sorry, I still don't want to go back. They said that I didn't have to worry. They would always be with me. And that if I ever needed them, I would have the comfort of knowing that they were there. And the next thing I knew, I was in the corner of the kitchen, my home kitchen, up at the ceiling and looking down, and my mother had just come into the kitchen, and the angels were saying to me, if you don't go back, your mom is going to be terribly worried and sad. And I said, okay. So then I was back.
Only mom could bring her back. Imagine a place so great, not even a kid wants to come back. Jesus said children have a special place in heaven. Jesus said, let the little children come to me. Do not hinder them, for the kingdom of heaven belongs to such as these. I mean, could it really be that relationships are made right and in a place so great, not even kids, so full of life would want to come back because it is life. And that's what I want to talk about today. Near-death experiencers all across the globe say that when they die, they had this great reunion. But that's what the Bible's told us all along. In the Old Testament, when someone died, it said, and he or she was gathered to his people. And that doesn't just mean buried in an ancestral grave, because many of them weren't. But relationship, it says, was meant to last. Jesus said this his last night on earth to his best friends. He said, don't let your hearts be troubled. Trust in God. Trust also in me. There's more than enough room in my Father's home. If this were not so, would I have told you? I'm going to prepare a place for you. And when it is all ready, I will come back and get you so that you will always be with me where I am. Jesus indicated heaven is relational. People are real. Life goes on. It's like one big loving family of God. And near-death experiencers say they had a welcoming committee, friends, relatives, loved ones who had invested in their lives. And they said they were there to welcome them, but also to protect them and to guide them on their journey forward. But Jesus also talked about this. In Luke 16:9, he said, I tell you, use worldly wealth to gain friends for yourselves, so that when it is gone, you will be welcomed into eternal dwellings. Watch how people describe this great reunion by their welcoming committee.
My family appeared. One of them put their hand out, and I knew it was my grandmother.
And when I looked up, there's my family. Everybody that had been related to me or part of my family came to greet me in. My grandmother Mary was out front. She was bright. She had a big smile and pure joy.
I was immediately greeted by a group of people, spirits, beings. They were absolutely exploding with a pure love. And I could be with them, and I knew without any doubt that I had known them and loved them as long as I've existed.
57.3% of those having near-death experience describe meeting other beings. When a deceased loved one is encountered during a near-death experience, they may be around the age they died, or interestingly, they may appear decades younger.
I'm surrounded by people that I had known and loved in life, and they were all perfect in every way, fully recognizable as themselves.
Pero me fijé, cuando miré para derechito, miré a mi mamá y a mi tío.
I'm looking at this man who I recognize by my heart. but I knew that that was Pa. He's my great-grandfather. Now, Pa was standing next to Ma. I knew her as an old woman when I was a kid. When she was in heaven, she looked to be in her 30s. This was my family.
On this right side of me were all these animals coming in. You'll be surprised when you get there and your pet's there to greet you in.
You know, it's funny because people ask me more about whether their pets are going to be there than their family members, which I'm not sure what that means. But yes, your beloved pets will be there, and that's biblical too. You know, Isaiah in Isaiah 11:6, speaking about heaven, says, "The wolf will live with the lamb, the leopard will lie down with the goat, the calf and the lion and the yearling together, and a little child will lead them." I mean, this is a place where all God's creatures live in shalom, in God's perfect peace. Everybody gets along. Republicans and Democrats get along in heaven. I mean, it's an amazing, amazing place. So why wouldn't your beloved pets be there as well? And people do see them. Mostly children who have near-death experiences are often welcomed by their pets, maybe because no one they know has died yet, and God knows who will make us feel the warmest as we're greeted in. But I find many people, when they think about heaven, you know, they think about people as these kind of ethereal, ghosty, Patrick Swayze, you know, misty kind of figures. It feels less real, less tangible. And yet Jesus said nothing could be further from the truth. In fact, Jesus said this in Luke 13:29, "People will come from east and west and north and south and take their places at the feast in the kingdom of heaven." There's going to be a feast. I mean, remember, the risen Jesus could be touched and embraced. He ate fish. And in fact, he said this his last night on earth when he instituted what we call communion. Look at what else it says. It says, as they were eating, this is Matthew 26, Jesus took some bread and he blessed it. And then he broke it in pieces and he gave it to his disciples saying, "Take and eat it, for this is my body." And he took a cup of wine and gave thanks to God for it. And he said, "Drink from it, each one of you, for this is my blood, which confirms the covenant between God and his people. It's poured out as a sacrifice to forgive the sins of many." Then look at what he says. "Mark my words, I will not drink wine again until the day I drink it new with you in my Father's kingdom." Eating, drinking, feasting. I mean, it just seems like normal life. Exactly. It's not eternal death, it's eternal life. I mean, look, all the things you love about life, this life, God created. And yeah, we can abuse them. We can overindulge in wine. Instead of loving and treasuring people, we can use people. But everything you love about this life, God created. And we were meant to experience it together again forever, the way it was supposed to be. In relationships, the way they were supposed to be. And it's real. Hugs are real. Memories are real memories there. People we invested in here are the people we will value most and see most there. And this is important because this life is continuous into the next. See, people matter, and how you love and invest in people here goes on with you into the next. You know, Don Piper was driving on a bridge on a rainy day in North Houston when an 18-wheeler went out of control, ran over the top of his car, completely crushed his car, killing him instantly. EMS arrived on the scene, pronounced him dead, but it took them 90 minutes to cut his body out of the wreckage. And yet Don revived to come back to talk about this great reunion. Watch.
I took my last breath on the bridge, and my next breath was at one of the 12 gates of heaven. I mean, there are 12 gates. I was at one of them, 4 on each side of the city. And I didn't go down a long tunnel. There wasn't a bright light at the end of the tunnel. I didn't have a near-death experience, really. If you're dead an hour and a half, you're not nearly dead. I was dead. And so I'm in this light. And I could make out in front of me a whole crew of people. a welcoming committee, if you will. I'm surrounded by people that I had known and loved in life, and everybody looked really good. I mean, if you want to really look good, heaven is where you want to be. And they were all perfect in every way, fully recognizable as themselves, but perfect, because many of them in earth had been very infirm. They'd been quite old. They were actually missing things here, and they were back there. I mean, my grandfather is extending his hands to me and saying, "Welcome home, Donnie," in a language I've never heard before, but fully understood. And I looked down and 3 fingers were missing on this hand. When he was alive, he was a lumberjack in his younger days. Very, very dangerous job. So he lost actually digits. Well, when I was a little kid, I was completely fascinated by that because he had this little stub sticking up. But now I'm seeing real fingers there. I'd never seen them before. My great-grandmother was standing beside him. She didn't have any teeth here on earth, but now she smiled at me. And it was a real smile. I didn't sense at all that we were spirits or intangible. I really felt that. In fact, my grandfather embraced me, and as he said those words, "Welcome home, Donnie," which was his name for me here on earth, Donnie. And the other people did as well. I felt pats on the back. It was embracing. It was pure love. But it was overwhelming. Frankly, it was just deliriously wonderful. Some of these people I hadn't seen for 20 years or more. Some of them had died subsequent to that, maybe only a few years prior to my death on the bridge. So there was no sense of age about them. There was no sense of infirmity about them. As I said, they were expecting me. It was a great reunion. I think heaven is a great reunion. As I saw all these people, whether they were teachers or aunts or uncles, or even my next door neighbor, Miss Norris, was standing over here. And I'm looking at them and I'm thinking, okay, this is awesome. It's wonderful. It's so great to see them and to see them so perfect. So I asked myself, why did this particular group come? Because they didn't even know each other on earth. And the reason I believe is because they helped me get there. These are the people who, prior to their death, influenced me for Christ. Mike would take me physically to Sunday school because he'd been a Christian since he was like 9 or 10 years old. So Miss Norris would come by and put me in that car with all those kids and take me to Summer Grove Church. So these are the people who helped me come to Christ, to come to know Christ. So I came back from that encounter with all those wonderful people with the question, if we greet people at the gates of heaven that we help get there, and I believe we will, who are we going to greet? I think that's the reason we're still here.
That's a great question. Who are you going to greet there? Because, the scriptures tell us that as we invest spiritually in people, as we help others get there, it continues on with us. Daniel, the Jewish prophet in about 500 BC writes this: "Those who are wise will shine like the brightness of the heavens. Those who lead people to righteousness will shine like the stars forever and ever." Which brings up a question: how will we appear to each other? Because it seems like people appear different to different people. And this was kind of a question for me as I studied this. Some said people appeared ageless. Others said, well, they were around 28 or 29 or 30. Others saw their grandparents as they last saw them in their older age and yet somehow perfect. Others saw grandparents that were younger. So how will we look? Well, I think Jesus, the risen Jesus, gives us a clue. Because remember, Jesus could be recognized fully by his disciples. But there was another time when he was walking with some of his disciples on the Emmaus Road after he had risen. And they didn't recognize him for a long time until he broke bread, and then they did. So apparently he could appear differently in different circumstances. And I think in the life to come we can too. Which kind of makes sense because on earth we don't always appear the same to each other. We don't always wear the same clothes, and we won't appear the same or necessarily wear the same things there either. In fact, Marv Besteman, a bank president during his near-death experience, said he was wearing golf slacks in his favorite shirt that he played golf in. And he noticed others of different nationalities there, some in African togas, some in Indian saris, the dress of their culture. But then Dr. Mary Neal, you may have noticed, talked about her welcoming committee was just bursting, she said, with love, but the love was light coming out of them, and wearing white robes. And many people talk about that. In fact, it's in Revelation 7:9. John says, there before me was a great multitude that no one could count, from every nation, tribe, people, and language, standing before the throne and before the Lamb, Jesus. And they were wearing white robes. Now, people don't always see other people in these robes, but I've come to believe these robes are not actually white, they're translucent. But they appear white because they let the light of God, the glory of God, the love and joy of God shine through them to those other people. And what if the more we spiritually invest in people in this life, what if the more we lead people to follow God like Daniel talked about? What if the more we build into and build up people here, sharing the light and the love of God here, is how much of the glory, the light and love and joy of God you get to express through you, flowing through you there. I mean, imagine, could there be any greater reward than experiencing the joy and the love that the Creator created, flowing through you to others? And Jesus said the same in Matthew 13, then the righteous will shine like the sun in the kingdom of their Father. Whoever has ears to hear, let him hear. And you know, NDEs say that different people appeared with different brilliances. None as brilliant as Jesus. You know, that makes sense too, because in Romans 8:17 it says, but if we are to share God's glory, we must also share his suffering. You know, what if the amount we're willing to go through suffering or sacrifice for the sake of others in this life determines how much of the glory of God we get to experience on the other side. You know, Jesus loved us sacrificially. How will you sacrificially love and serve and invest in people? You know, when you lead, when you teach others. And moms, you know, as you're investing in your kids, dads, as you're investing in your kids, that matters, right? It goes on. And those of you leading groups, those of you spiritually investing in others, teachers, those of you teaching children, you know, that may require sacrifice, sometimes suffering, right? COVID crazies, but it's worth it because it goes on with us. It matters. In fact, look at what Peter, one of Jesus' disciples, says in 1 Peter 5. Care for the flock, the group of people that God has entrusted to you. Watch over it willingly, not grudgingly, not for what you'll get out of it, but because you're eager to serve God. Don't lord it over people assigned to your care, but lead them by your own good example. And when Jesus, the chief shepherd, appears, you'll receive a crown of never-ending glory and honor. People last. Invest in them. Now, all this may bring up a kind of troubling question about relationships in the life to come. You know, my wife, Kathy, used to not really like to talk to me about heaven because she would say, but we're not going to be married there. And that made her sad. You know, and that's good, right? I mean, I'm glad. Not good if she said, but we're not going to be married there. See, it's all in the tone, right? You know, and she was sad because of this idea that there won't be marriage in the life to come. That all comes from a time that Jesus was asked a trick question by the religious leaders called the Sadducees, who, by the way, didn't even believe in the afterlife. So they ask Jesus this question. They say, hey, Jesus, a woman's married and her husband dies and she remarries and the second one dies and it happens 7 times. Who's she going to be married to in heaven? You know, they're like trying to trick him. And that is a lot of where this whole idea comes from. And some of you have been asking the same question, I know, you know, because all your exes may live in Texas, but you're just not sure you want them living next door in heaven, right? Be honest. Okay, but Jesus answers in an important way. He replied, you're in error because you don't know the scriptures or the power of God. In other words, he's saying the power of God can unite people in ways that all our relational squabbles and challenges in this life, by God's love and power, we can overcome there. And by the way, we can overcome them here if we let his love rule and unite us. But he goes on and Jesus says, at the resurrection, people will neither marry nor be given in marriage. They'll be like the angels in heaven. Now notice something. Jesus did not say you will not be married. He said you won't marry. In other words, choose to marry or be given. There were arranged marriages back then in marriage. There won't be any new individual marriages. There will be no procreation because we'll be like the angels, eternal. So there will be no new families, but that doesn't mean we won't be with the people we love most. And in fact, many NDEers saw their grandparents there together in heaven, or their parents there together. Now, how does God work out, multiple healthy, loving marriages on the other side? I have no idea, except bathed in God's love, what people say is nothing is wrong. Everything works. And just think about it. Relationship will be so different. Nothing will be hidden. Communication will be perfect. And so imagine how it will change our relational dynamics, and think about how we can bring more of that relating to earth today. NDEers say that communication is perfect. It's heart to heart, full understanding. I think it's what God said to the prophet Isaiah in Isaiah 65:24, when he said, before they call, I will answer. While they're still speaking, I will hear. It's this perfect heart-to-heart communication. Crystal McVeigh, whom I'll be interviewing tonight at 7:30, she describes the communication of heaven like this. There was instant and complete communication between us. What do I mean by that? Well, imagine a password that if you let me use it, gives me instant access to everything you've ever said, thought, or felt, past, present, or future. Instantly, I'd have a more complete understanding of you than would ever be possible on earth. Well, that's what it was like there. And just imagine that kind of communication. Perfect communication with nothing hidden, understanding each other fully. And that's how we ought to try to live today. That's what it means to bring more of heaven to earth today, as Jesus prayed. Think about it. If we can allow God's love today, God's forgiveness today, God's grace to let us be more transparent and open with one another, just think about the unity we could have together. If I understand more of your history, if I understand more of what you've been through, more of your motives, if I seek to understand more of you than just have more of me understood and listen more to you than just have me heard, just think about the oneness we could experience. It's what they experience in heaven. It's what Jesus prayed for his last night on earth, when he said, I pray for those who will believe in me through their message, that all of them may be one, Father. Just as you're in me and I'm in you, may they also be in us, so that the world would believe you've sent me. As we bring more of heaven's communication to earth, by seeking to listen and understand others more than trying to be heard and understood, we answer God's prayer. Heaven is going to be this incredible reunion and unity and seeing the people that we've loved on earth, but even more. Imagine meeting the ancestors you never knew. I had a chance to sit down with Christy Beam from the movie Miracles from Heaven. She was played by Jennifer Garner in that movie. And Christy is Annabelle's mom. Annabelle had a near-death experience, and listen to what she says about who she met in heaven.
When Annabelle was about 4 years old, she started having what we call tummy troubles. Then when she was 5, she fully obstructed abdominally and we almost lost her. She had a major surgery, many doctor's appointments, ERs, procedures, tests. for them to find out that she had an incurable digestive disorder called pseudo-obstruction motility disorder. So Annabelle lived on 10 medications a day, and she took them several times throughout the day. She, in and out of hospitals, we used to fly to Boston to see the guru of pediatric gastroenterology specialty in Boston, Dr. Samuel Nurko, every 4 to 6 weeks for treatments. And then the other times we were at home, she was on the sofa in a fetal position with a heating pad on her stomach. That was her life. And she had decided that she didn't want to live anymore. She was 9 years old. It was 2011. And she had said, Mommy, I just want to die. And, where there's no more pain. And so I just remember saying to her, Annabelle, I was devastated because she's a fighter. She never, ever stopped fighting. And then she was done. And that particular day, Abby, my oldest daughter, encouraged her to go out and play, which was a miracle that she did because she was just so weak and frail. But they did. And so they were in this cottonwood tree, sitting on a branch 30 feet in the air, and that branch began to give way. And Abby, in her quick wit and thinking and brilliance, she said, Anna, get your weight off the tree and go in that little hole where a branch had been, but it had fallen and left a hole. And it was hollow all the way to the ground. And so Anna went in the hole and fell 30 feet head first. And she said she went to heaven. And she said that she sat on Jesus' lap and that he told her that she wanted to stay because it was so peaceful and there was no pain. And that was it. She was out of pain. And he told her that it wasn't her time, that she had to go back, but he had plans for her on earth that she could not fulfill in heaven, and that when the firefighters got her out, there would be nothing wrong with her. She said, I knew I was in heaven because I saw my Mimi, and that is my husband, Kevin, his father's mother, so her great-grandmother. But she said she didn't recognize her at first because she was so much younger. And then when she realized that's Mimi, and she's so much younger, she said, I knew I must be in heaven. She saw a little girl, and she said, I kept looking at that little girl because her face looked and reminded me just of you, Mommy, and of Abby, her big sister, one of her sisters, but her big sister. And she said, I kept thinking, I know that face. And so she said she asked God, who is that little girl? And he said, Annabelle, that's your sister. That was what confirmed in my heart for me, okay, this is so very real, because I had shared with the girls that I had had 2 miscarriages, but I never shared with them that one of them was an actual viable pregnancy that I lost, and one of them was called a blighted ovum that never truly was life created. But she didn't know that. She just knew that I'd had 2 miscarriages, and the fact that she saw one little girl in heaven was totally amazing to me. Today, Annabelle is on 0 medications, 0. She's been released from the care of her pediatric gastroenterology specialist, and she eats whatever she wants, whenever she wants. There is no known cure. They have never had anybody have pseudo-obstruction, it be confirmed with more than 1 motility test, and then be cured of it, except for Annabelle.
And Annabelle's one more line of evidence that God is real, but even more that relationships last. And she met, her miscarried sister that she had never met. And that's what convinced Christy that this was real, this really happened. And today many of you, I'm sure, have had miscarriages and have grieved the loss of children. And I just want you to know, first, God grieves with us, but it's not the end of the story. David, who wrote many of the Psalms in the Bible, lost a child in birth and grieved that child. And then he said this in 2 Samuel 12, can I bring him back again? I will go to him, but he will not return to me. And if you have lost a child, if you've had a miscarriage, you will go to that child. There will be a great reunion. Megan, who had the near-death experience at 6 years old, actually had a second one when she was miscarrying. She was bleeding profusely, and she began to leave her body again. But listen to the message she got that maybe some of you need to hear as well.
From that time on, I was just bleeding profusely. And It was very painful as well, and I was trying to lie down and rest. And one of the times I was lying down, I had the sense, the soul of the baby leaving me. And I just started to follow. I guess I left my body and I just started to follow the baby. And the baby turned to me and said, I love you so much. You did nothing wrong, but you can't come with me, and he left. When the spirit of the baby left me, I saw a male spirit. I knew his name was Michael, and he just talked to me and said, don't worry, this, I love you, and you did everything right.
And one day it'll all be made right. All the relational losses, all the relational mistakes, all the relational misses. God promises it will all come together in perfect love of God, perfect communication, perfect unity, relationship the way it was meant to be. But we can bring more of heaven to earth today. And that's Jesus' prayer. He taught us to pray, Father, your will be done on earth through me as it is in heaven. So how can we do that? Well, today, bless your mother. None of our mothers were perfect, but we wouldn't be here if it weren't for them. And they did their best, and they deserve our gratitude. They deserve our blessing. So take time to really bless your mother. Maybe they're not on earth anymore like mine, but you can thank God for them and just say thank you. God, for my mom, and thanks, Mom, for all you did for me. And then look for opportunity to help others get there. Because all those who have received the love of God, the forgiveness of God offered through Christ, they're with God and with each other for eternity. But help people know. People are struggling. So share your spiritual story with them. Share God's story with them. And then make things right with broken relationships. If you know there's a relationship and God's Spirit's been prompting you that you've done something wrong, just apologize. It's not worth it to hold on to it. And forgive. Whatever they've done to you, forgive as God forgives you. Forgiveness is the way that we can be set free, not be held hostage to the past and what people have done to us. And then invest in the future generation. If you have kids, take advantage of this opportunity. You have an opportunity to not just watch TV, but invest in your family. Go use our online kids curriculum to spiritually build into your kids during this time. Or if you don't have kids, find ways to serve and invest in the next generation. But remember above all, people last. They matter to God. Invest in them. Relationships were meant to last.
People last. They matter to God. Invest in them. Relationships last. Dis so belangrik dat ek en jy dit weer sal hoor. Ons leef in 'n tyd wat mense so vir hulle self leef. Die Bybel sê vir ons in die laaste dae, hoe nader ons aan die einde van die tyd kom, sal mense lovers of themselves and lovers of money wees. En hulle self en besittings en geld word belangriker as mense en as verhoudings. En ek dink dit is nodig dat ons weer vanmôre sal besef hoe belangrik verhoudings is. Kom ek sê vir jou, as jy deur moeilike tye hier op aarde gaan, is dit baie keer die verhoudings wat jou help om te cope binne in daai situasie. Dis moeilik as jy deur moeilike tye gaan en jy moet so alleenig deur dit gaan. Maar dis die mense wat vir ons lief en dierbaar is, dis die mense wat vir ons omgee, waarvoor ons omgee, nê. Dis ons vriende en ons familie en mense met wie ons saam die lewe doen en geestelike boeties en sissies wat ons arms as het ware omhoog hou ook, soos wat ons verlede week ook geleer het, soos wat Aaron en Hur Moses se arms omhoog gehou het. En daarom is verhouding so ontsettend belangrik. En kom ons neem ter harte wat die Here vanmôre vir ons geleer het. Aan die een kant kan ons uitsien na mense wat vir ons kosbaar was hier op aarde, wat ons vooruit gegaan het, dat ons eendag hulle weer gaan sien en eendag weer gaan saam wees. Dat ons ook weet, ons gaan op een of ander manier ook verhoudings met mekaar hê as boeties en sissies van Christus wat saam die lewe gedoen het. Maar dat ons regtig nie net sal vooruitkyk en daai hoop vir ons sal hê nie, maar dat ons regtig sal invest in mekaar hier op aarde. Dat ons sal invest in ons geliefdes, sal invest in ons kinders, sal invest in mekaar, sal invest in ons familie, maar dat ons ook binne in die kerk van Jesus sal invest in mekaar en sal mekaar sien as kosbaar. Want jy is kosbaar vir die Here en ek is kosbaar vir die Here. En ons gaan almal eendag saam in die nuwe Jerusalem wees. So kom ons doen regtig moeite en kyk weer na ons verhoudings. Miskien is daar verhoudings waar ons so 'n bietjie meer aandag moet gee. Miskien is daar verhoudings wat ons moet herstel, nee. Miskien is daar verhoudings waar ons naby aan mekaar was, maar waar ons bietjie uit mekaar uit gedryf het en kom ons doen weer moeite dat ons nader aan mekaar kan kom. Niks van hierdie goed op aarde gaan hou nie. Ons verhouding met God gaan laast, gaan vir ewig hou en ons verhouding met mekaar gaan laast. En daarom invest ons in ons verhoudings. Kom ons doen dit en ons doen dit omdat ons lief is vir die Here en omdat ons lief is vir mekaar en vir mekaar omgee. Kom ons raak so 'n bietjie los van onsself en ons eie belangrikheid en ons raak 'n bietjie los van die wêreld. Kom ons sit in ons verhoudings in. Dankie dat jy die diens met ons gedeel het voordat ons dit afsluit. Kom ons maak ons oë toe en kom ons vra vir die Here om deur sy Gees met ons te werk. Here, dankie dat ons weet ons verhouding met U gaan vir ewig hou. Maar dankie dat ons ook vandag gehoor het dat ons verhouding met ander mense gaan ook vir ewig hou en dat ons mense wat ons vooruit gegaan het, wat vir ons lief en dierbaar en kosbaar is en wat U ken en wat 'n verhouding met U gehad het hier op aarde, dat ons weet ons gaan hulle weer eendag sien. En dankie dat ons ook weet in die tyd waarin ons lewe dat as iemand vir wie ons lief en dierbaar is, van ons weggeneem word of ons word weggeneem van hulle, dat hulle kan weet, dat ons kan weet, omdat ons wedergebore kinders van U is, gaan ons eendag mekaar weer sien. Dit is so 'n hoop, Here. En ons is so dankbaar dat ons dit weet. En dankie vir dit wat U vanmôre vir ons kom leer het. Dankie dat U vir ons nuwe hoop kom gee, dat U ons oë opgelig het. Maar Here, ons moet bely dat in die tyd waarin ons leef is verhoudings nie meer wonderlik nie en ons spandeer so min aandag eintlik aan verhoudings. Ons word so ingesluk deur die besig wees van die wêreld. Ons word so ingesluk deur die goed van die wêreld dat so baie keer Here skeep ons verhoudings af. En ek wil vir U vra dat elkeen van ons dat U deur die Gees in ons sal werk en ons weer sal laat besef na vanoggend se boodskap hoe kosbaar is verhoudings. Dat ons sal invest in die mense in ons lewe, ons familie, ons geliefdes, ons kinders, ons huweliksmaats, dat ons sal invest in ons vriende en dat ons sal invest in mekaar wat saam deel is van U liggaam en deel is van die bruid hier op aarde. Dat ons sal invest binne in gemeentes, binne in ons verhoudings met mekaar. En ek wil vir U vra, Here, dat ons so sal lewe in verhoudings dat ons U altyd sal uitstraal. Ja, Here, partykeer is daar konflik en spanning in verhoudings. Partykeer maak ons ander seer en ander maak ons seer, want ons leef in 'n gebroke wêreld en ons is nie volmaak nie. Help ons om vinnig te wees om ander te vergewe. Help ons om vinnig te wees om vergifnis te vra en verskoning te maak. Help ons om nie wrokke teen mekaar te dra nie haat teen mekaar te hê nie. Maar help ons, Here, om mekaar lief te hê en om mekaar te aanvaar en om vir mekaar om te gee. En ek wil bid ook, Here, waar ons almal met mense te doen kry daar buite wat ons nie noodwendig altyd ken nie. Mense, as ons besighede toe gaan en ons gaan koop groceries of wat ook al, die persoon agter die til, die persoon wat ons dalk help, Here, help ons om hulle op so 'n manier te hanteer dat hulle sommer net U binne in ons sal sien en ons U liefde sal uitstraal. Dankie vir ons saamwees vandag en ek bid die seën en die beskerming en die bloed oor elkeen af deur hierdie week in Jesus naam. Amen.